If history were a palace drama, then Cleopatra would be the main character, intelligent, beautiful, and always playing on a level no one could match. Born into a family where power struggles were as tight as a drawn bowstring, Cleopatra not only had to deal with scheming siblings constantly trying to overthrow one another, but also had to face the mighty Roman Empire. She quickly learned one fundamental truth: to survive, you have to use your brain. More than just the last queen of Egypt, Cleopatra was renowned for her extraordinary intelligence, top-tier diplomatic skills, and the ability to captivate the most powerful men in the world. From Julius Caesar to Mark Antony, they were all so enchanted by her that they waged wars in her name. Honestly, if Facebook had existed back then, Cleopatra would have had at least 10 million followers. But every glory comes at a price. Amidst wars, political intrigues, and legendary love affairs, Cleopatra crafted a legacy that, even over 2,000 years later, people still talk about. So, was she a political genius or simply the greatest flirt queen in history? Let's dive into the story of this ultimate survivor. 1. Origins. Cleopatra was born in 69 BCE into the Ptolemaic dynasty, a Greek ruling family that had governed Egypt since the time of Alexander the Great. This family had a rather peculiar tradition: they only married each other. Yes, you heard that right, they wed their own siblings to keep the royal bloodline pure. If there had been a family and marriage magazine back then, this dynasty would have undoubtedly made the front page for being downright bizarre. Cleopatra's father, Ptolemy XII, nicknamed the Musician, because he preferred playing the flute over ruling, was a weak and powerless king. When he passed away, Cleopatra, at just 18 years old, was forced to marry her 10-year-old brother, Ptolemy XIII. She must have thought, I want a grown man, not a kid who hasn't even hit puberty yet. But thanks to the utterly absurd royal laws, she had no choice but to accept this political marriage. And, of course, her little brother had no intention of letting his big sister hold power for long. Ptolemy XIII wasn't too thrilled about Cleopatra running the show, so with the help of some meddlesome officials, he overthrew his sister. Cleopatra was kicked out of the palace and forced to flee to Syria. At this point, most people would have accepted their fate, but not Cleopatra. She wasn't the type to sit around crying and hoping for a miracle. Instead, she quickly gathered an army, ready to turn the tables. But with so few troops, what could she do? Right at that moment, Julius Caesar, the most powerful general and politician in Rome, arrived in Egypt. Cleopatra immediately realized, this is the man who can help me reclaim my throne. The problem was that Cleopatra was in an extremely difficult position. The palace was occupied by her little brother, Ptolemy XIII. Caesar was there, but she couldn't just stroll in and say hello like it was a high school reunion. Cleopatra wasn't the type of queen to sit around complaining. If she couldn't walk into the palace openly, she would break in, with style. Her plan was simple, but so bold that no one else would have even thought of it. Cleopatra rolled herself up in a silk carpet and ordered her trusted servant, Apollodorus, to carry it straight into Caesar's chambers. Now, picture this scene: Apollodorus, sweating profusely, struggling to haul a massive bundle through multiple layers of guards, probably thinking to himself, serving the queen, the things I have to do. Meanwhile, the palace guards, too lazy to check, simply assumed, it's probably just some fancy gift for the Roman general. Whatever. Then came one of the most legendary moments in history: boom. The carpet unraveled, and instead of gold or jewels, out emerged a stunningly beautiful, intelligent Egyptian queen with sharp, mesmerizing eyes, right in front of Caesar. Caesar was completely stunned. He didn't see that coming at all. He was a battle-hardened general who had faced thousands of enemies, but dealing with Cleopatra, that was an entirely different kind of challenge. She wasn't just young and beautiful, especially compared to a 52-year-old Roman general, but also intelligent, sharp-witted, and knew exactly what she wanted. She wasn't the shy, demure type, she spoke directly, confidently, and irresistibly. Caesar fell for her instantly. Not only did he fall in love with Cleopatra, but he also decided to help her reclaim her throne. And so, war broke out between Caesar and Cleopatra's forces against Ptolemy XII's faction. The result? Ptolemy XIII suffered a crushing defeat. In a panic, he tried to flee but, unfortunately for him, slipped into the Nile and drowned. Someone might drop a poor guy reaction here, but nah, he betrayed Cleopatra first, so it is what it is. Cleopatra officially reclaimed her throne, this time, with no one daring to stand in her way. And just like that, a grand alliance was born, both politically and romantically. Not only did Cleopatra regain her power, but she also had one of the most powerful men in Rome backing her up. 2. Loving Caesar, a scandalous romance that shook Rome. After reclaiming her throne, Cleopatra and Julius Caesar dove headfirst into a passionate romance. Think of it as the ancient version of a power couple. And let's be real, Cleopatra was the ultimate strategist queen. She didn't just pick the right lover, she also secured her position by giving birth to a son, little Caesar Ion, the half-Egyptian, half-Roman prince. For Cleopatra, this might have been just a brilliant political move. But for Caesar? It seemed like he was genuinely smitten. How do we know? Because he decided to bring her and their son to Rome, practically introducing them as his official family. And just like that, Rome was thrown into complete shock. Why? Because Cleopatra was a foreign queen, and the Romans were notoriously xenophobic. To them, an Eastern queen boldly appearing in their capital wasn't just wrong, it was dangerous and absolutely unacceptable. Moreover, Caesar already had a wife, Calpurnia, a proper Roman woman. Yet, he openly maintained his affair with Cleopatra and even built her a grand palace right in the heart of Rome. The citizens could only shake their heads in disbelief, while the politicians were absolutely furious. Excuse me, does Rome even have laws anymore? How does a married man bring his mistress home like this? Cleopatra, however, showed no signs of humility. She didn't come to Rome as a secret girlfriend or a hidden mistress, she arrived as a queen, loud and proud. Dressed in dazzling royal attire, crowned in gold, and exuding the aura of a true empress, her presence practically screamed, "Hello, everyone. I'm Cleopatra, the future queen of Rome." The people of Rome were so outraged that rumors began to spread, whispers that Caesar planned to divorce his wife, marry Cleopatra, and even turn Rome into a monarchy. For a republic that prided itself on democracy, this was an unforgivable crime. The result? A conspiracy was formed, and in 44 BC, Caesar was brutally assassinated in the Senate, stabbed to death by his own peers. When Cleopatra heard the news, she was shocked to the core, and immediately realized she had no future in Rome. Without wasting a second, she bolted back to Egypt at full speed, leaving everything behind, including her dream of becoming the queen of the Roman Empire. In short, Cleopatra and Caesar's romance wasn't just an ordinary love affair, it was a scandal that shook an entire republic to its core and ended with one of the most shocking assassinations in history. Truly, falling for a powerful man can be dangerously life-changing. 3. When Cleopatra met Mark Antony, the ultimate seduction that cost a Roman general his career. After Caesar's assassination, Cleopatra returned to Egypt, continuing her reign as the ultimate queen boss, balancing ruling her kingdom and raising her son, Caesar Ion. But power is never static. With Caesar gone, Rome plunged into chaos, and that's when a new figure entered Cleopatra's life, Mark Antony, a formidable general, but a bit too gullible and very weak to feminine charm. At the time, Antony wanted an alliance with Cleopatra because Egypt was still a wealthy superpower. But Cleopatra wasn't the type to just show up when called, she knew she had to make a grand entrance to leave a lasting impression. And so, she orchestrated a legendary arrival that left all of Rome in awe. Cleopatra didn't arrive to meet Antony in a simple chariot, nor did she sneak into his palace like she had with Caesar. This time, she went full mythological goddess mode. She appeared on a golden barge, with purple silk sails and silver-plated oars that shimmered in the sun. Dressed as the goddess Aphrodite, she exuded pure divinity, while the air around her was filled with fragrance, thanks to servants constantly spraying perfume. Harpists played enchanting melodies, singers performed mesmerizing songs, and the entire scene was nothing short of a blockbuster movie entrance. This wasn't just a political meeting, this was theatrical seduction at its finest. Mark Antony took one look at this spectacle and immediately lost all sense of dignity. Romans were known for their cold, calculating nature, but Antony? His heart melted on the spot. From the very first moment, Cleopatra completely captivated him, not just with her beauty, but with the undeniable aura of a true queen. Antony was so obsessed with Cleopatra that he immediately left his wife and moved in with her in Egypt. Everyone was shocked, this was one of Rome's most legendary generals, yet he chose to dedicate his life to a foreign queen. The result? Cleopatra and Antony had 3 children together, and their love only grew stronger. But this wasn't just a sweet romance, it also dragged both of them into a bloody war. The story reached its breaking point when Octavian, Antony's archenemy, entered the scene. Octavian was Caesar's adopted heir and a man determined to rule Rome. When he saw Antony growing closer to Cleopatra, even going so far as to divide Roman territories among her children, he lost it. Octavian declared Antony a traitor and launched a war against him. And just like that, Antony and Cleopatra, once a powerful couple, became hunted fugitives. Their love story didn't end in happiness, instead, it led them to tragedy. But at the very least, it became one of the most legendary romances in history. A tragic ending, but absolute queen energy until the very end. At this point, everyone was hoping for a happy ending for Cleopatra and Mark Antony, but fate had other plans. In 31 BCE, the Battle of Actium erupted, the final showdown between Cleopatra, Antony, and their lifelong enemy, Octavian. But, as cruel fate would have it, they suffered a devastating defeat. After their army was defeated, Cleopatra and Antony retreated to Egypt, desperately trying to turn the tide. But Octavian gave them no chance, marching his forces straight to Alexandria and laying siege to the city. At this moment, Cleopatra came up with the most dramatic idea ever, faking her own death, to test her lover. She sent word to Antony that she had died, probably just to see how much he truly loved her. Honestly, in the middle of a life-or-death crisis, was this really the time for loyalty tests? The result? Mark Antony was so shocked that he immediately drew his sword and took his own life. This was definitely one of the most brutal gotcha moments in history. But Antony didn't die right away, he was still conscious enough to realize he'd been tricked. When his soldiers informed him that Cleopatra was actually still alive, he probably wanted to bang his head against the wall, but at that point, it was too late. So, Antony was carried to Cleopatra, where he took his final breath in her arms. A tragic love story worthy of a movie, yet with the most ridiculous death imaginable. After Antony's death, Cleopatra knew there was no way out. Octavian was not the type to forgive and forget, he would definitely drag her back to Rome as a trophy, humiliating her in front of the world. But Cleopatra was the queen of Egypt, there was no way she would let herself be disgraced like that. So, she chose to die in the most dramatic and mysterious way possible. She let a venomous snake bite her. Why a snake? Because, it was quick, painless, and deeply symbolic. In Egyptian culture, the sacred serpent represented royalty and divine power. At the same time, her death created an aura of mystery, sparking debates for over 2,000 years. Did Cleopatra truly commit suicide, or was she assassinated? And so, Queen Cleopatra officially ended her tumultuous life. After her death, Egypt fell into the hands of Octavian, becoming a part of the Roman Empire. But Cleopatra was not just an ordinary queen, she became a legend. Even though Cleopatra had died, her name lived on. People remember her not just for her beauty, but for her intelligence, ambition, and exceptional political maneuvering. If someone asks, how do you survive in a dangerous political world? Learn from Cleopatra, use intellect when brute force isn't an option. Choose the right allies at the right time. But most importantly, never test your lover's loyalty in the middle of a crisis.